So it's been exactly 1 week since the election. More than 2 million people went out to vote, and there were reports about lack of gloves at polling stations and resulted in an extension of voting hours. There were also multiple instances of large crowds gathering, especially on election night. So given all this, does the MTF still believe it was safe to hold an election? And is it concerned that election clusters might emerge in a week's time?
Well, I mean, I believe the elections department did their very best to conduct the elections in a safe manner. They have recognized publicly there were areas that can be improved, and they have said that they are looking at the areas that, reviewing all of these areas. But by and large, if you look at the actual conduct of polling, and all of us were around, including members of the media, these are conducted in open spaces. The time spent in, even if you are queuing up, it's not as though there's close contact in terms of touching, talking, but people are spaced aside, spaced apart, and then you go in, you do not talk to anyone in a very prolonged manner, and then you cast your vote, and there are sanitizers provided, a whole range of different safety protocols were put in place. So I believe the elections department have done its best to put in place the safety protocols and measures for the conduct of the elections. Whether or not anything happens after this, whether there will be any case emerging, we will not know now, but if it does, we will know later, and then we will report and highlight accordingly. So I think let's not jump to the conclusion just because we see queues forming. Queues form everywhere, not just when people go and cast a vote. Queues form in F&B outlets, queues form in hawker centers, in markets, so there are queues everywhere. Right? Queuing per se is not an activity that would necessarily cause the transmission of the virus. But what we all need to do is to make sure that, once again, whether we are queuing up for something, whether we are going out to purchase something, or for any other activity that is permitted, each individual must continue to exercise responsibility for his or her actions. That's really the bottom line. If you are sick, for example, and you continue to go out, it doesn't matter whether it's for the purpose of going out to vote, or for the purpose of going out to work, or for the purpose of going out to an F&B outlet. That irresponsible action by somebody who is sick and continues to go out despite knowing that they have symptoms will lead to a cluster, potentially lead to a cluster forming, regardless of the kinds of activities they are engaging in. So I think let's have some perspective about what are the risks and why it is so important that all of us continue to exercise individual responsibility for our own behaviors.
From the queuing, we also saw a lot of people gathering as results were being announced with absolutely no social distancing all over Singapore. So, I mean, is it fair to say that we should expect a pickup in the number of infections, and is the task force itself bracing itself for an uptick in cases? And if you are you rolling out any preventive measures of any kind to either avoid or try to minimize this potential increase?
Well, there were these scenes of people coming together to celebrate. Ideally, I mean, they would have practiced safe distancing. The people who were there, they know who they are. But I think the moment got the better of them, and they perhaps forgot about some of these requirements. But from the pictures I've seen, all of them were wearing masks. They may not have kept to the rule of 5. And if we can find out who they are, and we have a means to, we might be able to identify and take them to task. But I think if you look at the numbers, there are quite a number of them. And if you look at the contact that they had, I'm not sure that they were in close contact for a very long time. But in any case, whether it's that particular moment in time, one night, or whether it is, as I said, other lapses that may happen outside of that moment, it can happen in a community, it can happen anywhere in Singapore. I think it comes down to the basic point. Anytime there are lapses by any individuals, there will be a consequence, potentially. And all of us just need to remember that point, that it's very basic, right? Anytime anyone decides to abandon caution, thinks that it's okay, I do not need to abide by the safe distancing measures, they put themselves and they put the whole country at risk. Unfortunately, this appears to have happened in that particular incident, and I would imagine it would not be the end of it. There will be many other incidents where lapses do occur. So once again, we appeal to everyone to remember the basic fundamentals. Remember, COVID-19 is not over. Do not be complacent. Do not assume that we've got testing, we've got tracing, we've got all of these measures, and therefore it's okay. We only need to look at the evidence around the world, and that's why we've also highlighted what is happening now in many other countries where they had successfully controlled the virus, but due to a whole range of lapses with regard to safe distancing by individuals or by different groups, they see a major resurgence of the virus. We would like very much to avoid this outcome. We are trying our very best in the task force, in the government. All the officials are all out trying their very best to enforce the rules, to identify early any case, and then to ring fence and contain and isolate any suspect cases. But we cannot do it by our own. We need everyone to cooperate, and that's why it is so important that every Singaporean, everyone does their part.